And speaking of moving on, we're now going to do a little combined session about on-farm service. Part of it's going to be around the genetic side, where we've got Michelle's going to have a discussion around the Genomic Acceleration Project and calf vitality. Michelle is a PhD candidate at La Trobe University and has been a key part of the dairy and part of the dairy bio team, but I think also everyone would know Michelle's key role in DataGene over a long period of time and her involvement in the industry in general. Since we learnt last night, she's from Ontario, and during her journey here in Australia. Michelle and her husband also, if people aren't aware, own and operate a family dairy business based in Gippsland, so certainly able to bring the whole package together of information. The second part of this discussion about on-farm is going to be about biosecurity, and we'll be joined by Dr. Debbie Twiss. Hope I got that correct, Debbie. As close as I can get. Debbie is a dairy cattle veterinarian with 23 years experience who pivoted from clinical practice to enter the world of extension by taking up the position of Regional Extension Officer with WestVic Dairy, regional branch of Dairy Australia in mid-2019. Debbie's role involves development, delivery and facilitation of activities on and off farm to support dairy farmers in areas of cow health, fertility and welfare. In 2014, Debbie gained experience with foot and mouth disease, FMD, outbreak as part of the EU FMD preparedness program in Nepal. The recent outbreaks of foot and mouth disease and lumpy skin disease in Indonesia have highlighted the importance of understanding national biosecurity plans and how we can act at a regional level to manage risk in animal health on dairy farms. So I invite Michelle to start this session, and then we'll move on to Debbie, and then we're going to combine for a single Q&A. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Graham, and it's lovely to see everyone here today. Last night, as you know, we celebrated 40 years of ABVs, and that takes us back to the 80s, and I am old enough to remember a bit of the 80s. And at that time, we had these little vinyl discs that played music, and they were small, usually, and they would have one song on one side and one song on the other side. And there was always a bit of a competition as to whether the song that was on the A side was better than the song that was on the B side. I'm going to let you guys make a decision as to whether the two parts of my presentation, whether the A side or the B side's a little bit better, because I've got two topics to combine into one. The first one is to talk about the Accelerating Heifer Genomics Project. One of the things I should have mentioned about that record is I think there is a theme that ties the two together, and that's a bit about collaboration. Both of these projects have been fortunate to have a large number of collaborators, and we're grateful to that because that's actually what makes it successful. Back a couple of years ago, someone had a pretty brave notion that we could actually genotype virtually all heifers in Australia. It's a big target. And since then, we've been working at DataGene with the genomic service providers, with Dairy Australia and farmers to be able to move to the point where we've increased the rate of heifer genomic testing. Earlier this year, we cut some numbers. You can see that the increasing rate of heifer genomic testing has been consistent, but we've already tested more heifers in this financial year than we did all of last year. Congratulations to all of those here in the room that are involved in that. The story gets even a little bit even more interesting when we look at the bull side. Again, in this financial year, we've tested more bulls in Australia, genomically tested more bulls in Australia than we did in all of last year. This rapid increase in the rate of genomic testing, both for heifers and bulls, puts us in a really good position to be able to identify the best animals for our dairy population going forward. But how did this happen? It wasn't by accident. Surely we've had some really good market conditions. We've had good livestock, good export heifer trade. We've had good market conditions in terms of milk price. There's improved fertility in terms of having some more heifers around, great use of sex semen. So there's lots of things that are contributing to this. But I think in addition to that, We've also got an increase in terms of an improved service, better collaboration, and faster, that means faster turnaround time, in addition to the extension and communications component that makes genomic testing a little bit, the benefits of it are more aware to a broader group of farmers. Wanted to give you just a little example about what we mean by an improved service that delivers a faster turnaround time. In 2020, the time it took for the genotype to be evaluated within our system was about 22 days. That's how long it took to get an evaluation out once the genotype arrived. Through a number of improvements to the service, that's now down to about 8 days or so. And that puts us in a position to be able to release results on a weekly basis that Matt talked about last night. Now, we still have some gaps in terms of animals that don't receive results. Last time I talked about this stuff, about 20% of the animals that we got genotyped weren't getting results because of some particular sort of issue. That has changed quite a lot, again, due to some improved services. Only 4% of animals now have an unresolved sire issue, about 2% an unresolved dam issue, and a 1% didn't get results because they had some sort of problem with their breed. And that's certainly a step change from where we were a few years ago. So while the service has improved, that doesn't mean anything if farmers aren't aware of or aren't interested in what the service is. Dairy Australia recently did a survey before Christmas with about 400 randomly selected participants across the country. I think some key results from here is 93% of the people involved in that survey were aware of genomics and genomic testing. And the number that was planning to genomically test the heifers in the next 12 months that weren't already testing was about 20%. Now, if we do the numbers in terms of how many animals that is, again, another step change from where we are now. Now, certainly, I think the bottom line is also of interest, 63% saying they don't genomically test heifers at the moment and aren't planning to do so. But I suppose if we think about 12 months ago, there might be other things that we change our mind on, and that's our job to be able to work on that. Now, to support the increased awareness and use of genomic testing, there's been a strong extension component where you've seen DataGene, Dairy Australia, and the genomic service providers working towards a number of extension activities. We've actually got some cards at the back that explain those activities because they are available to you and your clients should you want to host something. These are just some pictures of some of the activities that are around 3 different levels: an introductory one, an on-farm workshop where we get our hands dirty and actually get to see things happen on farm, and then an ongoing webinar that's available for those that have already started testing so that they can explore the benefits of explore the results and get more benefit from that testing as they progress. And that's at a pretty good sort of response rate in terms of the farmers that have participated. 97% of the people that participated in the first group of activities said that they were going to take action. 9 out of 10 would recommend those activities to others. And those are just some thoughts that the farmers reported, that they're seriously thinking about testing their heifers, and others saying, I want to do it as soon as possible so I get full advantage of it. So I think there's some nice products that are there and available to you and your clients. So my request to you is make sure that your customers aren't missing out on heifer genomic testing. There are people, resources, and support available for you to help your customers adopt the new technology. Now, I'm going to embarrass some people. Can I get Rob Cooper, Kristen Davis, Debbie Twiss, Pete Williams, Pete Thurn? Can you guys pop up? And actually, Robin McLean, you're here as well. Ross Reed. These are people that are working with DataGene and the regional development programs. And so if you want to organize something for your customers, have a chat with one of this team. They would love to have a chat about what's available for you and your customers. Thanks very much, guys, for helping out with that. You'll see that there's been a sustained traditional and social media campaign around heifer genomics. There's a bit of a peak happening sort of at the moment where there's been new podcasts, videos case studies written and shared in many forms of media, so you'll see that around. And please feel free to share that content with your customers. Oh, that didn't work very well. Can I go back? Oh, I thought everyone was going to go, aw. Can we try that? Aw. There's nothing better than seeing a cow with a lovely, healthy calf at foot. That's an awesome picture to see when we walk into a paddock. And I think, Rob, that's photo is a credit to Carrie, that photo. A beautiful photo. Unfortunately, that's not the story. About 90,000 of those calves didn't make it last year on Australian farms. About 90,000 stillborn calves. As part of the Dairy Bio team, and a new step in life for me to become a student again, I've had been fortunate to be able to look back at historical records to see what the fate of calves have been over time. And about 7% of calves are born dead. So I've been fortunate to work with the team at Dairy Bio, including Majid, I think might be online, McConnell's in the room, Mike Goddard, Amanda Chamberlain, Jenny Price, and certainly appreciative to their guidance as we work through this project. Because what I'm interested in is seeing, can we do something to reduce the proportion of calves that are born dead at birth and that die before weaning? Just in terms of defining the trait, when a calving record is recorded, farmers will record if that calf was born dead or alive. That's our first critical piece of information in terms of working out stillborn calves. We record calf size, calving ease, we record calving date, and gestation length. And that package of information is critical in terms of working out a way to reduce stillborn calves. Now, some of those will be familiar to you. You already use calving breeding values when you're helping farmers make sire selection decisions. You're already using gestation length also to help make sire selection decisions. But what we don't have at the moment, one of the missing pieces to the puzzle, is calf fate. And so that meaning stillborn calves. So when we started to study, you got it now. Well done, well done. When we started to study stillbirth, the story got a little bit more complicated because, as in many maybe interesting endeavors, it takes two to tango when it comes to stillborn calves. So there are actually two parts to this trait. We've got the stillbirth maternal part, so the ability of a cow to deliver a live calf, and stillborn direct, which is the ability of a calf to be born alive. And from a genetic point of view, we actually want to improve both of those. The third trait that I'm playing with is pre-weaning mortality. And just to define this is the calves that have arrived in the calf shed, but have a termination date that's before day 84 of age, so before 12 weeks of age. And that's based, again, on historical data. Now we've seen a few genetic trend charts over the presentations so far. I can introduce some more in terms of the genetic trends for stillbirth direct. This is for Holsteins. In the last 20 years, just by the nature of the sires that we've been selecting, we have made some improvements in terms of stillbirth, about 2.5% or so in a 20-year period. When we've calculated the breeding values for stillbirth maternal, so this is the ability of the cow to deliver a live calf, we've made a roughly 3% improvement, again, in that 20-year period. The picture is not so rosy for pre-weaning mortality, where we've made virtually no improvement in that 20-year period. So I think a couple of things that we've learned so far, and hopefully you'll be along with the journey with me while we get to the point where we have potentially a new breeding value that helps us improve reduce calf mortality in Australia. There is genetic variation in these calf traits, so we can breed for improved stillbirth direct, stillbirth maternal, and pre-weaning mortality. But the important bit is that we need to validate, like any metric or any piece of information that you're being presented with. A good question to ask is, how is it validated? And we plan to validate these breeding values using gold standard Australian calf data, which we've collected over the last couple of years through the Calf Vitality Project. I'd just like to thank my colleagues at Dairy Bio for helping me, but also the people that are working in herd recording centers, the farmers involved in the Calf Vitality Project now, and the farmers that over the last 20 years have been recording calving records over that time, and my colleagues at DataGene, funding from Zoetis to help support some of the genotyping. I certainly appreciate your contributions to the project so far. And now I'd like to pass the wand to Debbie, when I'm looking forward to hearing more about the work that Debbie's doing in biosecurity.
Thank you, Michelle. A well-functioning biosecurity system is critical to support Australian agricultural businesses and our way of life. With regards to protecting Australia's agricultural trade with an estimated value of $75 billion this year, we would do well to heed this advice from one of the most legendary war strategists, Sun Tzu, 5th century BC. Our system is built on shared responsibility, that is cooperation, investment and actions from governments, industry bodies, exporters, importers, farmers and the broader Australian community. In short, everyone has a role to play in the protection of national biosecurity. Australia is in the fortunate position of being a continent surrounded by water, but in today's global trading market, we must all play our part to protect our enviable health status. We act to prevent entry, but we must be prepared to deal with incursion. The short story. Australia has been free from FMD, foot and mouth disease, since 1872. Australia has never had LSD, lumpy skin disease. But these viruses, LSD and FMD, have never been closer to our Northern Territory than they are now. LSD was detected in Sumatra in March 2022 and has moved eastwards to Java. Whilst infected animals and hides are the most probable route for the spread of LSD virus, disease transmission also occurs via biting insects such as flies, mosquitoes, and possibly even ticks. Therein lies the concern that if this disease were to continue eastward and reach Timor-Leste, infected insect vectors could be blown on trade winds from Timor-Leste to the Northern Territory. In that respect, LSD has a 28% chance of entry into Australia in the next 5 years. FMD was detected and reported in 26 out of 37 provinces in Indonesia from May to August 2022. So we forgot to continue to worry about LSD. Rock on in FMD. And with it, biosecurity response zones at Australian border checkpoints to manage passengers arriving on all direct travel from Indonesia. And thus, the detection of FMD in Indonesia raised the risk of FMD entering Australia in the next 5 years from 9% to 12%. Indonesia was last infected with FMD in 1974, and it took 12 years with strict movement control and rapid vaccination programs to reach the clear of FMD without vaccination status in 1986. In that 1974 outbreak, 13,000 animals were infected with FMD. In the current 2022 outbreak, where cattle are the main transmitters, in Indonesia, we have 54.7 million animals at risk, and over 500,000 have been infected. Inadequate compensation, vaccine hesitancy, and the difficulty involved in reaching millions of farmers contribute to the challenges of controlling the current FMD infection. With the lack of national stock movement traceability, shortage of vaccine, and reticence to report infection, FMD will remain in close proximity to our northern border for years. Australia probably has a slightly increased risk should FMD enter in respect to the fact that we have more maintenance species, that's sheep, doing a lot of movement. This is just 1 week in Victoria, the movement of sheep. So it's possible sheep could be infected. We wouldn't know about it. They're not as overt as cattle are in Indonesia. Any delay in advising the detection of diseased animals will be the determining factor for the impact of any emergency animal disease reaching Australia. Fight or flight. Human beings have been taking action to mitigate risk since the dawn of time. Your ancestors may have run fast enough not to be eaten, or they may have fought hard enough to eat. Now, this is my reference to genetics for today. According to Ancestry.com, I am 42% Samoan, 8% Tongan, and 4% Viking. I have a hunch my ancestors did not select running as their risk mitigation action. As signees to the Commonwealth Emergency Animal Disease Response Agreement, the EADRA, dairy farmers are required to plan and implement actions to reduce the risk of pest and diseases spreading from farm to farm and communicate those requirements for staff and visitors. There are many different parts to consider in a biosecurity plan. And often a sign or a QR code at the gate is the first indication that a farm has a considered biosecurity plan in place, and it has expectations that will be placed on visitors to help manage that farm's biosecurity. There are a range of factors that influence service providers, the risk of transmission, that we will transmit disease from farm to farm. And this log is one way of assessing the myriad of those factors that could influence whether we are falling in the green as low risk, or as myself, who still does a part-time gig as an emergency animal veterinarian, I fall in the red. So it is a consideration of my contact with other farms. Do I own other stock? Heck no, I like my weekends, thanks, and I respect those who do own stock, but I don't envy you every weekend. Control with sick animals on other farms? Yep, that's me. Contact with farm animals on the farm, and often it is. Even if I'm going there to give advice in my role as a REO, I do still get sometimes, hey Deb, got a glove here, got some lube, come on, is she pregnant? All right, here we go. Also, the potential to have contacted FMD infected animals or materials. So when I came back from Nepal, it was a 7-day stand-down time to manage my risk. And also thinking about the use of PPE, personal protective wear, to try and mitigate that risk of spreading disease from farm to farm. Hygiene with respect to vehicles and equipment, and understanding of biosecurity compliance, and that I will apply to a farm's biosecurity plan. The aim of managing our risk as visitors is to reduce the risk of disease transmission by minimising the exposure of stock and or grazing areas to potential contamination from other properties we have already visited. We need to consider the ways we will reduce the risk of cross-contamination, so arriving in clean vehicles with clean clothing, clean overalls and disinfected wet weather gear and boots, and the wearing of gloves. Parking in designated gravel areas away from where stock move, and trying to avoid driving through the farm manure and silage pit area. Also considering the layout of the vehicle that we can control our own, having dirty areas and clean areas of our vehicle so we're not contaminating our own clean PPE with the soiled gear from the farm that we're just trying to leave. Coming clean and going clean, so thinking about leaving soiled material behind on the farm of origin, not taking gloves, not feeling that I have to take all my rubbish with me. Changing protective PPE between properties, and ensuring that any equipment shared between farms, such as lubricant bottles, are sealed and I don't take manure, urine or milk in that material to the next farm. If it is contaminated, it needs to be disposed of as well, and then disinfecting cars, boots, myself, between properties. Sometimes that can happen on properties. Sometimes it has to happen in the car park of Woolworths between calls as well. We need to understand what it takes to be effective with our hygiene activities. Just as a biosecurity sign is only as effective as the communication plan behind it, activities like using a foot bath are limited by the preparation of footwear before stepping in that disinfectant. Dirt and dung present on our footwear will decrease the efficacy of our disinfection. Australia's biosecurity system is built on shared responsibility. You are another set of eyes monitoring stock health. So if you see something, it's important that we say something. At a national level, the Commonwealth state government will protect Australia's biosecurity. But at a local level, when you appreciate the risks to spread disease, you can take appropriate actions to support biosecurity on the farms you visit. For the next steps, you can learn more about effective biosecurity on Dairy Australia's website, and it may just be simple things of what you can do to improve the setup in your vehicle. You can also enrol for self-paced, free, short online learning modules on the Dairy Australia and the AgVic websites, or even go and see Sarah in the corner there for a really good manual and read Chapter 3 on biosecurity for more of the local issues that are important for our cattle and stock. And finally, I leave the final question to you. Will we as service providers find a way to step up or find a reason not to? Thank you.
Thank you, Debbie. Maybe you might have to come back. Before we go into any questions, I think there's one that was raised at the beginning of Michelle's talk. So I need a little vote process here. So the A side of this 45, is it going to be genomic acceleration? A few hands. Come on. Or are we all going calf vitality as being the A and not the B side? And it's not that hard to put your hand up. Come on. You know, what are we going? Calf vitality is the A side? I'm seeing a bit more response there. Genomic acceleration project. I'm going to just go across for the calf vitalities on your A side. But it's first time. The other one's had a little going before. So we have a question here. So Michelle, this is from Janet. I usually do not record calf size, so the default average size is automatically recorded. I suspect this would be quite common. Would this bias your results? Yes. Sorry. And really falling apart. This isn't a comedy act either.
Janet, that's a fantastic question about calf size, and I've actually played with that quite a lot in my research so far and found some unusual results. So the evaluations that I've conducted for stillbirth, both direct and maternal, are adjusted for calving ease, but not calf size. Calf size is an unusual trait. You don't want really a tiny calf, and you don't want a massively big calf. It's hard to know which one's worse, basically, between little and big. You know, an average size calf is usually quite nice. But when I was trying to incorporate it into the analysis, it wasn't really working the way that we thought. So we've just stuck with using calving ease, and that does a better job in our models so far. So at the moment, Janet, you're safe with your calves being listed as normal. I would encourage people, though, to record this information. The more records we have, the more that we can do with it down the track.
Okay, thank this one. I'm not sure whether there's a Batman in the room, so or Robin, but this is a compliment. Thank you. Can Dr. Debbie Twiss narrate my life? That was an excellent presentation. So there you go. There's your next and Jimbo. So Deb.
I thoroughly recommend. Shouldn't yell, should I use my farm voice? I thoroughly recommend doing Ancestry.com. It's a fascinating way to narrate your life. And if you've got a significant other in your life as well, get it done together. Trust me, you compete on the Viking. It's so important.
Okay, thank you. I'm not sure if there's any questions from the floor that we need to. So we've done really well. So once again, thanks Michelle and Debbie for their presentations.